to another episode of Chasing Frets. As you heard on Monday, I'm joined this week by Joe Gore.
Hi, folks.
And we have been having such a great time hanging with Kirk and kind of picking his brain about everything. And the topic today is originally going to be focused on Chicago blues and kind of his influence and what he's gleaned from that. But as you'll hear, we kind of branch out geographically, and we talk about a bunch of different regional blues styles and what Kirk has kind of pulled from them, and if there's a style that you're interested in, something you can listen for.
Yeah, he's this is one of those players who's a music scholar as well as a great player, and he really speaks knowledgeably about the different regional styles, the nuances between individual players. This is a well-informed dude.
And he had this phrase that he said, I think it's in this, it's either this one or Fridays, where he goes, it either has to be uptown or low down, and that really stuck with me as far as we were talking about the various different styles of blues that have influenced him. Is that it's either, like the sophisticated Robin Ford, Larry Carlton stuff that he was so influenced by, or even like on his new record, My Blues Pathway, he has this really kind of down and dirty tune with Charlie Musselwhite, who we talk about, who he'd done some touring and playing.
Yeah, I admit I kind of it was because Kirk had played with Fabulous Thunderbirds. I really kind of had him in my mind as a Texas guy, and that's the Texas blues is one stream leading to his river, but there's a lot more there too, and his passion for Chicago blues is immense, and you'll hear some of that when we talk.
So that's going to be today's episode with Kirk Fletcher. So you can hit us up at chasingfrets@premierguitar.com, and let's hop right into it. All right, Kirk. So one of the topics that really came to mind after I've been listening to your albums now for years and bumping into you at various NAMM shows is the influence of the different regional blues styles. And it's always interesting to me to talk to a modern blues guitar player and see where their kind of roots go. And one thing I hear pop up a lot in your playing is the influence of Chicago blues. So when when you hear somebody talk about Chicago blues, what's the sound that comes to mind?
Well, in sort of the small, short answer to this question that we can definitely elaborate on, the main key point to me is Mississippi Delta blues coming to the big city. That's sort of like, if you can imagine, like a guy playing, a guy playing soulful acoustic country blues like Robert Johnson, Charlie Patton, Tommy Johnson, all of these people from Mississippi, and then that coming to a big city and all of the things that go along with the big city, electricity, electric guitars, fine cars, and nice clothes and all of the things, like some people done Texas to the West Coast, the same thing, I think. So Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, people like that are really, to me, when I think of Chicago blues, I really think of Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Eddie Taylor, and then a little bit later generation of Otis Rush, Buddy Guy, Magic Sam, and a little bit later, then you get the Luther Allisons and different people like that.
His Live in Chicago record that was recorded, that first you hear the radio DJ or whatever do the intro, and then that guy kicks off the shuffle of Soul Fixin' Man. Like,
no, it's crazy. And that's the thing. That is like for me, I just connect with that so much. I don't know if it's because my family's from Arkansas. I don't know what it is, but the Chicago blues, it's just because it kind of combines all of the things I love. A lot of those West Side younger blues, Chicago blues guitar players really like B.B. King a lot. So we all know Kirk Fletcher loves B.B. King. And then you got it with this sort of kind of a little bit more like earthy, gritty, kind of more like, stripped down, gut bucket kind of thing. So you're mixing uptown with lowdown, and that's the story of my life. I like Larry Carlton and Muddy Waters. I love it really slick or low down. And that's
But no, it's just no Middletown for you. It's either uptown or down.
Middletown is like you got to all the way go there or keep it like low down. Yeah, that's what I really like. I mean, I really like the singing string guitar with that kind of Chicago, like kind of hard.
This kind of subgenre also even dives into specific shuffles, like a Chicago shuffle or like a Texas shuffle, like something Chris Layton would do with Stevie Ray. Like if we were to break it down a little bit more, what are the elements of the Chicago blues sound on guitar? Let's start with rhythm guitar. What's when you think of Chicago blues rhythm guitar, what comes to mind?
Well, when I think of Chicago blues rhythm guitar, I think of like Jimmy Rogers, the other Jimmy Rogers that played with Muddy Waters.
The one that doesn't yodel.
Yeah, the one that doesn't yodel. But Jimmy Rogers, this record called Chicago Bound is one of the records I really think of as far as, like the quintessential Chicago shuffle and kind of where it starts. And then things like Little Walter, Watch Yourself, or, My Babe or something like that. That's really, that's real stripped down kind of, like swinging. It's swinging, but it's raw and it's not a lot on it.
It's simple. It's simple in concept, I think. Like if somebody were to just like literally write out the notes, it's very simple. But to get that feel, like it's very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's deceptively difficult. I think it's just really damn difficult.
It's difficult. It really, really is. And then it kind of, it's like a puzzle. It's like you have to have the right bass lines. You have to have the right thing to make it work. I'm not a blues pure. Well, I am a blues purist in a way, but I'm also like wild stuff too. Like a genre, it would be like, like certain kinds of straight ahead jazz. There are certain things that make that straight ahead jazz. And I feel there are certain things that make it Chicago blues, And if you're writing songs, you can do whatever,
I feel like in a way, Chicago blues is kind of the equivalent in the lineage of blues music as bebop is to jazz. Because I feel like Chicago blues is a style that if you're going to play blues guitar, you got to touch on it at some point and you got to kind of understand it.
I think so.
And just same thing with bebop. No matter what kind of jazz you're going to play, you're going to have to deal with bebop. You might not play bebop like as your thing, as your voice, but you're going to have to deal with it at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
Something you just mentioned in passing made me think of something I was pondering while I was listening to your music last night. And, here we've got, at this point, pretty much exactly 100-year tradition of recorded blues music.
Yeah.
And, it's if you view blues music as the wellspring of, jazz and rock and roll and everything else, it's like the cornerstone of American music. It's kind of the cornerstone of world music because it's influenced so much stuff. But when you look back at this, obviously, hearing you talk and hearing you play, it's very clear that you're steeped in this tradition and you've studied so many different styles and players. But, now 100 years later, to what extent when you approach that music, do you do it in the sense of, honoring the tradition, what it is and what it isn't has been defined. And if you're gonna play in this genre, you have to, respect certain rules and boundaries that define it.
Yeah.
Versus to what extent is it a ever growing, ever evolving voice that has no limits? What's the line between honoring the past and
moving forward
and making your own thing and playing that style 100 years later?
Yeah. Well, to me, like with any great art form, I think of Jean-Michel Basquiat, the fantastic painter, contemporary painter. Jean Michel was very, very influenced by, the old stuff. He studied all the old stuff. He studied, like, in the same with Jimi Hendrix, he studied all that old music that came before him, the older forms and stuff. And I think those are some of the most innovative people to do it, really. Hendrix, and I mean, I think that the more you can submerge yourself in the history, the more I feel I can go forward. The more I know about the past, I can like think about it. You just have to use your mind and like, your heart and your spirit to like write songs, and it'll all come out, I think, if you just write songs. And I like my blues pretty traditional, like if I want to go out, I'll listen to, like, I don't know, free jazz or something, I'll listen to that, or Alan Holdsworth if I want to go to the moon, but like Muddy Waters, I just want to make love to you. That harmonica solo on that song is like, that's the foundation, that's the earth, that's everything. And I think that if people would go a little bit, dig a little bit more deeper in blues, and really they will find, that it's not so boring. It's not so, everybody wants to dress up the blues or take it somewhere else. But do you really know about, this real language of blues, just like jazz? People study jazz and, learn and go to school and all that. And I feel blues is very similar, in a lot of
You know,
ways.
I know that when you were coming up,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these greats were still with us. You could go
Yeah,
hear them.
few of
You
them.
could go hear them
Yeah,
play. And
yeah,
now, a couple decades
yeah,
later, there's not many of the,
yeah,
not many people from that generation left. What I know that you got to play with, you crossed paths with great players like Hubert Sumlin and stuff.
yeah.
Could you? What are some of the cases where you did get to, encounter that 20th century past face to face through, meeting or jamming with or sitting in with people?
Well, the older players, even though they were of an advanced stage when I got to play with some of them, James Cotton, Pinetops Perkins, Hubert Sumlin, many of these players like that, Uh, it's like this endless well. It's like this thing is like they are the blues. It's like you never can, like it's just so embedded in them, that you can't help but be inspired and influenced by it. It's just like no kind of way you can just, stomp them or anything. It's just like they're just endless blues and soul and this earthy thing. And it's just something that's hard to describe, And, me, I've tried to pattern myself after that, for whatever that is. But also, like I said, I'm a child of the 80s, so all of those influences now, I kind of, bring up those influences again now. But yeah, it's incredible. It's just something that I feel very fortunate to see or play with or hear or just listen at some of those guys talk about how it was.
You mentioned, sometimes if you want to get crazy, you'll throw on some free jazz. Is there, I'm just thinking out loud, is there such a thing as free blues?
Uh, Sonny Sharrock. I mean, like you think about a lot of those guys, they were like blues. They could play the blues, I mean, some of these saxophone.
Pete Cozy for sure.
Yeah, Pete Cozy, different guys like this saxophone players, different guys. Eric Dolph.
I'd put Vernon Reed in that category
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Because he did, he knew Muddy Waters and he played with
yeah,
Ronald Shannon Jackson. It's like
yeah,
he did occupy those two worlds.
Blood
absolutely.
Ulmer?
Blood Ulmer. Oh
Oh,
yeah. Wow.
man.
What a freak. What a
How do
great
you,
player.
what is the tone? The tuning is harmonic.
I
What do you know?
forget what that's
Hor melodic or harmonal
it was
melodic?
Harmonic was Ornette Coleman's
Oh,
term.
okay, yeah,
But like Vernon calls that, when he plays out,
yeah,
he refers to that as harmonic.
yeah,
And what was Ulmer's Ulmer used some strange tuning. Was it like all the strings tuned to the same pitch or
Same
something
pitch or
crazy?
something like that.
I'm
Yeah.
probably getting it wrong, but it was definitely not
So
the tuning
cool.
that most of us play in.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
so cool. I mean,
What a
it
unique
is.
voice, yeah.
I saw him once with Vernon at the Jazz Standard in New York.
Oh wow.
Ooh, what was that
Jimmy
like?
Vivino. It was cool. I mean, they were actually pretty. They weren't as out as maybe you would think, seeing those two names together on the marquee. They were pretty. They're kind of doing their interpretation of more traditional fare.
Yeah.
But it was just cool to see him just sit in his chair and just wail.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
That I just love that stuff and all of, like Bitches Brew and In a Silent Way. And, I just really, that's something else. That's someplace I can go to kind of just, cleanse the palate of certain things. I mean, it's just a whole different thing to see how far music can go in a different way. I mean, I don't listen to too much jazz these days because I'm trying to work on my singing. So I listen to a lot of soul music and R&B and older blues stuff just because I'm, kind of working on something. But I spend a lot of time listening to crazy stuff.
Kirk, well, thank you so much, man, for hanging with us today. And,
Always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so
always
much.
fun to
Pleasure.
talk and hang to you. So we're going to have him back for one more time this week, and we'll talk to everybody then.
All right.